Welcome to our latest series of the Harbour Voices podcast. For this series, we're shining a light on Aberdeen's Festival of the Sea and the community programme Open Road has created as part of the wider festival offering. In this series, we're taking a deep dive into the rich maritime history and heritage of Fitty and Torry, Aberdeen's two harbourside communities, and exploring what the sea means to them. It's being created ahead of the tall ships arriving into Aberdeen in 2025 and the Festival of the Sea that will accompany it. Both are a celebration of Aberdeen's histories and stories of the city's harbour area and the creative journeys that have made this festival an unforgettable voyage. Hi and welcome to Harbour Memories, and today we're joined by Hans Unkles talking to us a bit about the first solar powered fishing boat in the UK. So hi Hans, thanks for joining us. Would you like to just tell us a little bit about your project that you've been working on?
Right, well listen, So I've over time I've been thinking about the possibilities of working a fishing boat electrically. I started watching my neighbour who had a small dinghy with a solar panel and an outboard motor in the back of it, and over a couple of years I'm watching how that was actually viable, but it was too expensive to step into doing it on a bigger scale, the sort of scale of fishing that I was interested in. And then after somewhere about 2022, there was the prices of batteries were becoming more affordable, and there was a funding source that was available, so I started looking into that properly. The boat I've got or had is a Cygnus 21, which is like that's like the grey Fergie of the fishing industry. You know, like the grey tractors that have been there for all time. You know, the Cygnus 21's a sort of, I mean, my boat was built in 1978.
Wow.
So it's an old school boat, but because of that, it's proven. So it was the right. I thought it was the right boat to sort of do that with, but it's very much it's like stepping out onto a tightrope. To jumping into a sort of project that's like that nobody's done before. You're like, it's a tightrope, and once you've stepped onto it, there's no way back and there's no safety net. You're on there and you're committed. But I've got probably 40 years of fishing and boat building behind me.
Yeah.
So I felt comfortable with making the boat. I felt I could make the boat and get that bit right.
Yeah, so it's like one man with this sort of dream to kind of make it more sustainable and make it better for fishermen, I suppose, in the long run, as well as to our planet.
Yeah, I don't really know what my original motives are. Fundamentally, if you go right back to the root, it's that I'm feared for what's going to happen with climate change, with you see stuff happening. But I'm also motivated by the innovation. You know, if you're not changing and doing new things, you're kind of going backwards, or you're hanging on before you go backwards. It's to evolve, keep moving your life on to do different things. It's nourishing. It's good for you.
Yeah.
You know, so that's a motivator. What else? The fact that it was just the whole thing was possible was I'm looking at it going, I can make this boat. There's no one else in the country, I don't see anyone else trying to do it, and I don't see any industry stepping towards it, and we need to. The fishing industry is really stubborn about trying to stay doing the things that they, not changing their methods, and I'm frightened for the industry's future if we don't really open our eyes to the changes that are going to come, whether they're actual climate changes or legislative changes, where the fishing industry's behind just about every other industry in the country for accepting that we're going to have to change.
Yeah, and you've had, as you were just mentioning, you've had like decades of working in the sort of fisher industry. So do you want to just tell us a little bit about your background? So was it 17 when you got your first boat?
So yeah, I would be So I left school when I was 17, and I did an apprenticeship in boat building. I was 21 when I got my first boat. The Shile of Pite.
That was his name. Name for a boat.
That was my name.
I love
My dad was furious. He says you can't call a boat a name like that. So boats should be called nice girls' names. So the next boat I got was called the Girl Donald. And then one after that, the Boy Nancy.
So you've always been a little bit of a disruptor then, not
I think that's important. Is it not? It's
Yeah.
important to keep a bit of mischief in it.
And what is it? You've been fishing for, is it lobster and crabs then?
Yeah, so initially I dived for scallops, and that was probably the most enjoyable. I still think that's the best job I've ever had. Really, it's the most satisfying, best days in memory for fishing or scallop diving. But yeah, it's very difficult to dive for scallops now because of the legislation that's involved. It's health and safety controls that quite heavily, so it's now not really viable. You need 3 divers in the boat, and we can't really work with 3 divers. For you put one in the water and another in the water, and they both go different ways, and you can't manage it. So it's better with 2, one in the water and one in the boat, and swap. But so scallop diving, I did that for a good few years, and then I started doing creels work and skippering other people's boats, or fishing in other people's boats, and then skippering them. But all the way through this, each boat that I renovated or built it up myself, and then that turned into, I did a lot of fishing, but also I got called in to repair other people's boats and do refits. So I mean, I've got yachts, dinghies, fishing boats. I've got I'm comfortable with my knowledge on how to fix things in a kind of agricultural way rather than a finesse way. But then over the years that's developed. So the boat I've got now, the Lorna Jane, is I'm really, as a prototype all electric boat, I'm really pleased with the first attempt.
Yeah.
That's come out with very little needing changed in it. I'm quite pleased with that.
Yeah, and how have you seen the sort of industry change then in the past sort of like 4 decades, I suppose?
So the industry's, there's a few different aspects of it changed. The electronics have changed to such a way that now you've got very powerful ways of actually tracking the species that you're chasing. So there's bottom definition that's fantastic. From the boat you can see exactly what the bottom's made of. You can see nooks and gullies and crannies and set your pots exactly where you want to. So that's a good thing from a fisherman point of view, but also it's a lot harder on the stock because we're better at You're better at catching them. When I first started fishing, it was you lined up the yellow lichen in the rock with a point, and you lined up that point over there with the house roof, and that's how you found your ground. And then it moved on to the old Decca Navigator, a thing with a big box about that size with dials on it that when you get static in there, they would all spin all over the place. But you would calculate from the numbers on there. You would sort of memorise where you use the coordinates to go and get you to different areas. I mean, I still remember there's a rock that was 13,969.5. So reading for a rock, still that's all still in there. So and then that moved on to the tech getting better, the bottom definition. So that's been a big change. The amount of effort has changed. We've all got better at fishing. I can't really speak for the sort of mobile sector because I haven't fished in that, so I don't really know enough about how that's changed to sort of make any comment on that. But the creel fishing side of things, the biggest change is the number of creels. There's far, far, far too many creels in the water.
Oh, so it makes it harder then, I
Yeah, I
suppose.
mean, for all the reputation that creel fishing gets for being sustainable and you know, you're not damaging the seabed and you're only taking the species you're after, but there's no restriction in the number of pots, so and particularly at prawns, there's nowhere that you can put a prawn creel that there isn't one now, really. It's very, very heavily fished, that.
Yeah, and what have you sort of enjoyed over the past 4 decades? What is it that sort of has kept you at it?
Oh, it's a vacation. It's like if it's in your blood, it's in your DNA. I mean, I've got my family. You know, my grandfather fished lobsters out in front of the house. My uncles, cousins are all in the fish buying, selling industry. My great grandfather, they all fish lobsters off islets. So there's a sort of history that you're attached to. It's in you. It's a great way to work because you're absolutely your own boss. You're making your own decisions, particularly working single-handed, or if there's only a couple of you in the boat, you can pick and choose how your working system. We used to work at the peak of when we were fishing hard with a Gemini catamaran, a 33 foot boat that's a substantial sort of fishing machine, cost £250,000
Whoa.
in 1995.
Wow.
So and we fished that quite hard, but we made a point of only fishing for 6 months of the year. So we would push hard for 6 months, and then we would tie the boat up and maybe do a bit of diving through the summer and be a bit more relaxed about our fishing.
Yeah, so you have that flexibility, I suppose.
And you can do that
Yeah.
you can do that exactly. You can, with fishing, because the markets are usually strong enough that you can let them down and then go back, and they'll take you back the next week.
Yeah.
You know, so that side of it's unusual. I mean, there's not really many industries through the country that you can let them down badly this week.
Yeah.
Nothing for you. We were in the pub all week. You know.
And do you remember having those conversations with like your grandfather and things about his experiences, being like lobster?
Yeah, I've got a wee diary of his that he kept of numbers that they caught and where they caught them and stuff, and it's quite entertaining. That's a good read. My grandfather was quite. I was probably 9 when he died, so it's only got sort of vague memories of him, but.
Yeah, it must be something nice though, keeping that family sort of like profession alive, I suppose, or vocation alive. Sort of like getting passed down and passed down and passed down, and feeling like you're part of a bigger community.
Absolutely.
That's been where you're based now.
Yeah. It's kind of important, and it's and I was really pleased that both my daughters, went through. They did their introduction to fishing courses. They've got all their tickets, and they worked their way through university on the fishing boat and school. They were. When they were at school, weekends they were coming out in the boat and working, and that's I got a lot out of that.
Yeah,
they're both very fond of their. They've got good memories about it. I don't think they're running back into it, but they've got good memories about it.
Yeah, and that's like I was telling you a bit earlier when we were talking. That's almost a documentary in itself. You just don't hear about women doing that, or I certainly haven't anyway. And I think, today we're here to talk about It'll Never Work, a documentary about your solar-powered fishing boat. Yeah. So do you want to just talk about how this whole process has happened? Having your own documentary that's going to be screened on the 26th of July as part of Festival of the Sea in Aberdeen in the Fitty Film Nights, 6:30. That's a big achievement itself, having a documentary about your journey, which is incredible.
So the documentary came about almost as an afterthought, but it was connected to the funding. So when I started looking into the funding for the boat, how to fund it, they've got different tiers for how eligible you are for the funding, and if you're doing a study, if a university takes it on and does a study, you could get 100% funding. Whereas where I was at, 40% was all I was eligible for. So And I started thinking, right, a study will look down that. So I got in touch with a couple of universities, and they were kind of interested in doing it. But ultimately, I'm thinking, I actually don't know anyone who's ever read a study. You know, it's not. And if you're as a boat builder and I want to build a boat, I'm not going to get a university study to read about it. So I'm thinking it's not. You're not reaching people with that. If you want to reach people, a film, YouTube is where everyone goes to for everything, or film or telly or podcasts. So that's how you actually now currently that's how you reach people. So I thought a film. So I approached them with the idea of a film, and they upped my funding to 60%.
Okay, so 20%.
Yeah. So that and then another reason for thinking of film was that directly across the road from me. There's a young lad, Joe Osborne, who's 24, and he's been making films since he was at Inverness at college and did a course, and he's got a whole handful of films, classic films, that he goes under the name of Karstic Films. So he's got a whole pile of films that he's made, and so I put it to him, and he was thrilled. Called him up and said, "Let's have a business meeting," and he jumped over the wall and came with so and he was absolutely up for that. So we started filming, and the beauty of filming that sort of thing is that he was right there. So if there was any moment, so he captured an awful lot of the sort of community feel, the support feel, the realness of it has been captured, which I think is unusual in a documentary. There's nothing staged, there's very little staged or set up for it. And I don't think you see that so often in documentaries where it's absolutely real.
Yeah, and it is. You've been on quite a journey. So what have been some of the highlights during that process of creating the boat, and also what maybe have been the bits that you've been like, what do I do now? This has happened. I'm the only person ever making this. So what do I do?
The highlights I'm struggling to get to. I mean, the highlight for me is the boat being made up, but you don't get that, and I've had that with every other boat I've done. You don't get that till long after it's launched and going.
Yeah.
Then it's only now, and this is a year on, that I'm getting a real buzz out of the boat, a real good feeling. Because up until then, there's a lot of anxiety, or stress, and particularly with this one because it was completely unknown. Where I was going was an unknown place. But so two major obstacles. I could build the boat. I wasn't, and I was comfortable that the boat would function kind of the way I wanted it to. I was comfortable with that side of it, but I had to get through so there isn't an electric boat on the UK fishing register, so there's no coding within the Maritime Coast Guard Agency. They've got to check over every fishing boat, every commercial boat needs to be ticketed, approved by them. And they didn't have a protocol for an electric boat, so I had to get them on board. Firstly, get them on board, but that I was going to do this. There was a wee bit of this is going to. It's happened. We knew it was going to happen. That was their kind of action. So I had to get them on board, but the real problem, the real difficulty for me was that the funding came with a hard deadline, which was, and from when I get allocated the funding to when it was to be finished was a very short period of time. So I was allocated the funding. I think it was November in 22 that was allocated the funding, and the boat had to be finished, completed, paid, signed off by the end of March 23.
Ooh, that's hardly anything.
Yeah. And so I'd started the boat beforehand on the gamble that I was going to get the funding, but I still didn't know I was going to get it. And so then I had to cram everything into that short period of time. But then the funding and the MCA required an awful lot of office work, paperwork. And while I'm doing the office work, nothing's happening with the boat. So that was really starting to build up. The funding team were at sort of various requirements and questions and communications that was having to do with them, and that was stopping me reaching their deadline. And then the MCA, and in fairness to the MCA, they embraced it. Once we got rolling with them, they embraced it, and once they'd also come out and seen the boat and how it was getting built, they became more comfortable with it. So they worked to the deadline that I had, and we kind of got there. It was all very last minute, but
you got there in the end.
I got there in the end, and that comes across in the film. Is really that's what the documentary. That's what becomes apparent, and then there's also I got a huge support from friends and people in the village. There was a real bond. You're not bonding. I got backup from people in the village.
You felt like supported, and that it was a community thing as much as it was your own kind of journey. And what was it like when did it go on its first trip to the sea? Like that must have been.
So we did a trial. There was a couple of so I had to put it because there was unknowns. Everything was unknown that was doing with the whole boat. I mean, because there's regulations. So the boat sits in the water. At a certain height, but I was taking all the stuff out of the boat, the original boat, and putting new stuff in, and I couldn't really calculate how it was going to sit properly in the water. There's a regulation about a deck. Your deck has to be a certain height from the sea, and I didn't know how it was going to sit, and if I didn't get that height right, it would fail its code. I couldn't get through the coding.
Oh no.
So, and that was all a bit of, there were guesswork involved. That was winging it for that. So that meant that I got most of the stuff fitted, and then we did a sea trial where we put the boat in the water and did a bit of run around. That was in February that we did that, and that was quite a relief that day, because then I knew that I could get, that everything I'd done was potentially going to work. The big worry was solar panels, because it's an awful lot of weight high up, and the boat's got a stability test, and if the panels mess with that and make it over unstable, then it would fail it again and again, and there's no way. Then it wouldn't have solar panels on it, and it wouldn't be self-propelled. So it was all and what I said earlier, I had stepped onto a tightrope with no way back, and that's where I quite like the future funding system to have some contingency to back you beyond just initially building the boat. Because you are at this stage. Anyone adopting this now is very much experimenting, and if you don't have a safety net, then nobody wants to do it.
Yeah, and what do you think? So you've had her out. What's the name of the boat?
The Lorna Jane.
The Lorna Jane. So you've had her out now. You've been doing a lot of work with her. Yeah. So what would you say are the benefits of having this electric powered fisher boat?
Oh, so probably the top of that list would be the silence. You kind of know it's going to be silent. It's an electric motor, and that's the kind of the chat or the brief, but I didn't realise just the benefit that was going to be. How you calibrate how much better you feel, because it's huge. At the end of the day, you're not worn out anywhere near as worn out as you would be with a diesel. I mean, the highlight when you've got you're out fishing. In your diesel boat, the highlight at the end of the day is stopping the engine and but I can't actually explain how good you feel for working a whole day with no sound.
Sounds almost like meditative, really.
Exactly. I'm going to use that word. Good.
Yeah,
I'm going to
meditative.
use that one. Because that would be that could be the units.
Yeah, it's mindful meditation on the boat. And what would you say to anyone who's thinking about making their own, or maybe even using yours? Like, what would they get out of it? Apart from the peace of mind?
Absolutely everyone's interested. Absolutely every single, well, to my face, they're interested. but every single fisherman and everyone that sees the boat is interested in it. So but to find somebody else to commit, I've not found any. I've had a few people inquiring, sort of inquisitive, more than just asking about it. But again, that's down to, there's one guy that would have done it, would have gone down that road, because there's a funding system in place now that is a lot more relaxed than the funding system I was using, and they're offering 90% of the costs of replacing your engine, which is hugely attractive.
Yeah.
So
how much does it cost to actually do this kind of work?
So I think I was about 60 or 70,000 in bits.
Yeah, just to get the actual
motor, batteries, hardware, but I did quite a full refit to my boat. It was quite most boats wouldn't need the same refit that mine got. And I think if you had a boat that was suitable, that was going to be, had space for batteries and space for the motor, and was relatively clean, nice inside, you could do a conversion in 2 or 3 weeks.
Oh, so it wouldn't even take as long as...
No, it'd be quick. It'd be quick, given the right boat. Whereas, excuse, I went through the whole raising my deck and putting a new wheelhouse on, because I was...
You were going to do it, yeah.
Yeah, it was a full gut out, and I wanted the boat to be... it was important for the proof of concept for the boat to be a good one, to be peachy, and the boat, I'm really pleased with the way that the way the boat's turned out. It's a solid, good looking, and it's effectively a brand new boat.
Yeah, and one of the main benefits, I'd imagine, is it's so much cheaper.
So your daily running cost. So like, before we go to how cheap it is to run, the initial cost of the boat was, I think it's topped out at about 100. Roughly, I've got it on paper calculated, and we've come in at 134,000.
Okay.
I got 34, or it was 136,000. I got 34,000 in grant money, because the grant wouldn't cover my time or the administration costs that I had to put into it.
Wow.
So, which was big. So, and I reckon that was somewhere about £60,000 worth of time I put in to doing that. So, the boat, anyway, the top end, 134,000, you would struggle to build a brand new diesel powered boat the same for that kind of price. Okay. You might just within it, but that's kind of what it would cost you. So it's comparable if you're talking new, but if you could get a second hand boat like mine for 30 or 40,000, that would be perfectly functioning, perfectly workable. So there's kind of two arguments there, both opposing each other.
Yeah. And the running cost though is a lot cheaper. I think one of the things.
So it's not just the electric. It's not just the fact that you're spending less in electricity. It's the biggie is the maintenance. You're not. There's no impellers. There's no water pipes. There's no oil filters. There's no hoses. There's no stern tubes. There's no everything about it. All the stuff that you maintain on a daily basis. The only reason that I lift it's not an engine room hatch now, it's now a battery room hatch. The only time that I lift the deck to go down below is to show people.
Yeah.
It's not, and I'd never come home smelling a diesel.
Yeah.
Which, if anyone's had anything to do with someone in a boat or a fisherman, they will know that smell.
Yeah, so it's like more sustainable in the long run, I suppose, and they're not having to come home with the personal things of like smell and everything else. And you know, you're showing me a video before that's on your website about, you know, just the benefits that, you know, folk who are interested in going down this route could actually receive. So price is obviously a big one. Feeling quite, you know, conscious, socially conscious, like environmentally conscious as well. But if there's someone that's watching and listening to this, what would you say to them would be, you know, your top selling pitch to get one of these bad boys out there?
It's not burning any diesel. I'm fishing at a commercial and competitive level, and I'm not burning any diesel. I can match a similar boat, and I'm not burning any diesel, and that's the brief. And it's supposed to be by, well, they set the deadline at, is it 2045 or something, and that's 2023, and there it is on a plate. I've done it.
Yeah, and does it take less time or the same amount of time to go out, or?
So the boat's slow. So the downside, so I don't want to paint a big picture of roses. It's perfect because it doesn't suit everybody.
Yeah.
Absolutely doesn't suit every form of fishing, and it won't suit everybody's, you know, sort of needs. But what I found is you adapt to what you've got. So the boat's slow. I cruise at 5 knots, which sounds terribly slow now. But when I started fishing boat, that's what boats did, 5, 6, 7 knots.
Okay.
Whereas now everyone's wanting faster, 8, 9, 10, 14, 16 knots, and that's what they've become used to. But it's still, I've adapted to, and I'm fishing well. I'm fishing well with the boat with the number of creels I'm lifting. I'm quite happy with the income from it. So that's more of a psychological problem than an actual real hard mechanical reason not to use them.
Yeah, there does seem to be in our society that need for like more, fast paced, get as much. But actually, if you're finding yourself equally as productive going at a slower pace, and as you mentioned before, it's kind of like a mindfulness, like meditative almost practice, getting out there in the sea with your creels and collecting the lobsters.
Well, it's the end at the end of the day, the money, if it's money that you're after, then the money's the same.
Yeah.
You know, I'm coming out with what I've got in my pocket at the end of the day is the same. My grossings might be down, but I've got less going out. So I need to catch less, which means you're actually taking less stuff off the ground, and you're still making the same living off. You know, you still make the same living. So I quite enjoy that feeling that you're less intrusive, but still making a living from it.
Yeah, and so this is all for Festival of the Sea, this series of Harbour Voices. And what do you think about your connection to the sea?
How do you describe your connection to sea? There's a sea in my blood, or is my blood in the sea? I don't know. I can't be. I'm very uncomfortable if I'm away from the sea. I've got a long family sort of lifetime by the sea. It's actually anyone who works or is bonded to the sea, to working at sea, is I can't even think what I'm going to say. Excuse.
There must be a sense of freedom, I'd imagine. Like that kind of like, it's just me, my boat, I'm making my livelihood, and the beauty and the peacefulness of the sea. I mean, I'm saying
so that's that's the sort of romantic notion of it.
Yeah.
It's a challenge as well. Working at sea, it's your best friend and your worst enemy.
Yeah.
It changes. You know, it goes from being the best place in the world to being the worst place in the world in a flash. You've got a familiarity with it, though. I'm absolutely comfortable in all. You know, in all sort of sea. I mean, I get frightened. Of course, I get frightened, and you get wary, and you're definitely careful at times, and other times I'm very relaxed. I'm relaxed in the sea environment rather than not so much frightened. Is it frightened? It's not the word I'm looking for. It's So I'm comfortable at sea, whether it is, but I'm wary, I'm respectful, but also not haphazard. I can
You respect.
take chances. I can take I'm comfortable with taking the calculated chances as well.
And that's been from over 4 decades being out there.
Yeah.
And as you said, like the sea can change just as quickly.
Yeah.
Like you're going through and it's all fine, and then something happens.
Yeah.
And I suppose it's now autopilot for you to know what the conditions are and what you need to do.
Yeah, you also know when you're in trouble.
Yeah.
As well, which isn't.
Yeah. Well, can you tell us a little bit some of your scary, hairy moments out in sea?
Oh, I've had a few. The boat being swatted. I've been knocked over. The boat filled up with water, and with a wave that on autopilot, and the boat didn't turn quick enough, and it's broaching is when you're running with the sea, and the wave turns the boat's onto its side. So the boat's running down a wave, instead of running straight down to it, it gets turned sideways, and then the wave chases you, and it pushed like and it's a substantial boat. It's a 33-foot locking, which is they were locking. They were used for lifeboat hulls, so it's a good boat, but it got knocked clean over. We got filled up from the low side, and the whole boat then came back round, but it was full of water, absolutely full of water, and then the next wave was still coming at us. So I didn't have enough time to. Ideally, you would want to be pointing into the wave, but I didn't have enough time to, just the way the boat was sitting. I wasn't going to get it round in time, so then I had to turn it back and run with the wave. And then I've got this next wave picking us up, and it's like charging us forwards at the speed. The boat really picked up speed and started planing, and I've got how many 100 gallons of water that's slooping about the boat, and the boy Fraser that was with me, he's up the back of the boat holding the scuppers open, and we had about 3 waves where we actually got the water out the boat, and then we're kind of okay again, and that was back home for the gin.
Yeah.
That was.
That must have been hairy. And do you have any what's one of your favourite memories of being out at sea? Have you got any that just sort of?
I was talking about that earlier on. We put so the transom of the boat, which is the stern in the back of the boat, a square flat transom, and in this boat it was an offshore 27, which is a sort of open forward wheelhouse boat, but there's no toilet facility. So I made this bracket, I made this frame up, and sent it off the galvanisers, and it was a nice frame with a wooden toilet seat on it and a pole for the lavvy paper, and we bolted this onto the transom of the boat off the back of the boat, so you could sit off the back of the boat and absolutely on a beautiful sunset evening as the boat's coming back just fully relaxed.
That sounds like a good memory. Going to the toilet with the sun setting behind you.
Can you use that?
I don't know. But look, thank you so much, Hans, for chatting to us on Harbour Voices. And as I said, for anyone listening who really wants to get involved and hear a bit more about this really inspiring journey, the website is
it'llneverwork.boats, and the website sort of has got a couple of links to film to short information films. It's got a blog. It's got the history of the whole. I've got quite a long sort of story with photographs of building the boat and the whole process of building it, all the costs and the links to the different companies that are used for hardware. And it's also got a link to the main documentary film that's on that as well. So.
Yeah, and people in Aberdeen can see that on the 26th of July at 6:30 at Fitty Community Hall. And I believe you're going to be doing a Q&A from a live Q&A.
I think we're doing a Zoom Q&A for that one. Aye.
Yeah, that's going to be fantastic. And they can actually hear the stories and ask you some questions as well.
Yeah. The Q&As that I've done quite a few village halls and cinemas, and the Q&A things always go on. I mean, you know, they're always well received.
Yeah.
There's well received, and I quite enjoy doing them. So
Yeah, well, look, thank you so much, Hans, for sharing your story and for being part of Festival of the Sea. It's been an absolute honour to interview you and hear this inspiring story, and I hope more people take the lead from you and start having their own solar powered boats. It can only be a good thing for the future.
No, thank you, Lucy. I'm really glad that you're interested, and I'm glad that you're happy to share the story around. That's good.
Great, thank you. Thanks.
Thank you for listening to this Harbour Voices podcast. This series has been created with the support of Aberdeen City Council. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please share with others and check out the rest of our Harbour Voices episodes on www.openroadlimited.com.